You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
Welcome back in, 517 from the Princeton Orthopedic Associates studios. You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show right here on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey, 920 AM in Bucks, Burlington, and Mercer counties. We're continuing to remember the great life of Darren Daulton, who unfortunately over the weekend did pass away after a battle with brain cancer at the age of 55. We all know how much of a fighter Dutch was with the illness and then also the many injuries during his career. A man that was a great leader on that 1993 Philadelphia Phillies team that went to the World Series, and a darn good baseball player and an overall great guy, as we hear so many people do remember him with so many positive words over the last few days. Someone that was very close to Dutch was Curt Schilling, a teammate of Darren Daulton on that 1993 Philadelphia Phillies team, and we appreciate, considering the circumstances, Curt giving us a few minutes right now. Curt, I do send my condolences to you and your family and the entire Daulton family. Thank you so much, and how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I look at a time like this as I'm one of the blessed people that was allowed to have Dutch in my life, and I'm glad there's no more suffering. Because the end, from everything we talked about, he was struggling a little bit, and a man of that kind of honor and pride, the last thing in the world he wanted to be was a burden on somebody, and so, but I'm blessed to have played with him and to have known him and to have been impacted by him, and I'll take that with me forever.
How did he impact you? We all know the great leader that he was.
He did it a couple different ways. Hold on, I'm going to shoot both my little dogs. He did it as a leader, he did it as a teammate, and he did it as a friend. I lost my father in 1988, and so very early, and that was the year I made the big leagues. And so very early in my career, I was hunting for male role models, figures, people that could fill that void in my life, because my dad was a very big part of my life, and Dutch was one of those guys. He was, you got to remember, I went to I was 25 years old when I came to the Phillies, and it was a veteran team, Macho Row and all the things that went with that. So I wasn't part of that group, but I was part of that team. And that was, when you talk about Dutch and a leader, that's the first word that comes to mind and the only word that ever mattered. He was as tough as anybody ever played with, and he was by far the best leader I've ever been around.
And you look at his leadership style, he was honest. We all know how respected he was, hearing you guys talk about in the last few days. He knew how to have fun, and he was also tough as nails with all the injuries that he played through. Just why was that style? Why did it so much resonate with that team and was just so greatly respected with the Philadelphia community?
It resonated with the city. Listen, we lost the World Series and had a parade.
Unbelievable.
Right? I mean, but that was who we connected so tightly and so closely with that city, because it was very much a team of cast-off and throwaways and hard-working guys, and we got there. So but he was infectious. I got to tell you, one of my favorite Dutch stories. This was after '93. We were in the dugout, and Darren was very upset with a veteran player on the team, and they walked by each other in the dugout. And I just happened to be looking in that way, and Darren kind of threw his shoulder out to bump into the guy, and you could tell it was intentional. And this guy was a pretty big boy, and he looked at me and goes, "What's your problem?" He goes, "You and me, after the game, I'm kicking your ass." And we're all like, whoa. Next inning, Dutch is behind the plate, foul ball off his collarbone, shatters his collarbone. He tried to stay in the game. It was his throwing arm. Tried to throw a ball back to the pitcher. No go. It collapsed. He walks off the field, shattered collarbone, walks by and the guy says, "Don't think this is going to stop me from kicking your ass after the game." And we were like, okay, yep, you win. But he was he shouldn't have been played. He played 147 games that year. And he was the recipient of, at the time, I believe, 20 knee surgeries.
Wow.
And so nothing, again, I got to tell you, there's two types of leaders I played with in my career. There were the Cal Ripken and Scott Rowland types who, that's the majority of the same thing. I'm going to play the game this way. I don't want to have to talk about it. You just follow my example. And then there were the guys who played that way, but there were also the guys who were very comfortable speaking. They didn't care what your salary was or who you were you were part of their team, so they were leaders. Dutch was both. Dutch played with that effort and style and had no problem standing up and speaking. And I can tell you, for anybody that's been around a leader, this should resonate with you. Darren Daulton never, ever uttered the wrong word in public or in private.
How did he know what to say? What
it was
made him
who
so
he was,
special?
part of who he was. That you know, they say leaders are born and not made. To some degree, that's true. But a lot of times the leader has to have someone bring that out in them. And I think the adversity Dutch faced early in his career, helped him be the man he was, and the leader he was, and the teammate he was. I can tell you this: the 1997 Marlins don't sniff the World Series if Dutch doesn't get traded there.
And we had Jim Leland on the show, and he agreed with that. When they made the move, they said that it doesn't guarantee it, but if you want a chance to win it, you need a player like Dutch.
Yep. Well, he walked into, remember that locker room? Bonilla, Sheffield,
Good
Kevin
players.
Brown, Al Leiter. He walked into that locker room and said, I don't care who you are. If you're not here and about this team winning tonight, you and I have a problem. And those are the kind of things that, you either fight or you respect. And sometimes you do both.
Talking to Curt Schilling right now on the Zach Gelb Show. With you personally, we talked about how you were looking for that male dominant figure in your life, but when it came to baseball, how did he approach you? What were some memories that come back to mind in terms of his leadership?
Here's the thing. I'll tell you a quick story. It should show you exactly who he is. We were in this was in at the end of June. Or at the end of May in 1993, and I think I was 8-1 at the time. I was leading the league in the ERA, and that year the All-Star game was going to be in Baltimore. And my wife was from Baltimore, and I was traded from Baltimore, so I thought it's going to be so cool to go home and to kind of be in front of those fans again. And I talked about it publicly, completely ignoring that I still had a month to go. Fast forward a month later, and I'm coming out of a game in St. Louis. I'd given up like 2,004 runs in like one inning, and I'm out, and I've just finished the worst month of my career. And when I say that, I'm not making. I'm being truthful. It was the worst month of my entire career ever. And I was 8-5 or 8-6 with about a 4 ERA. And after that game in St. Louis, Dutch just shredded me in the papers. And it wasn't like a personal, it was more, we have guys on this team that need to grow up and wake up and da-da-da-da-da. I mean, just ripped me. And he ripped another guy on the team, but he did it very differently. Because then the media came running over to me, right? They're all, Philadelphia media, they're all like, oh my God, this is awesome. We're going to have an awesome fight here. They come running over to me. They tell me everything he said, and they're looking at me, and I was like, okay, what's your point? And they're like, well, what do you think about what he said? I said, he's 100% correct. He's right. Everything he said was true and right. It's my fault. I'm the reason this happened. Blah 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 blah. Point being, he knew exactly how to get to me, and exactly how to get to the other guy. Because the other guy he pulled me to the side because he knew if he did it publicly, he would have ruined the guy. And that was that. Being a leader is understanding the people you play with and play for. And Dutch knew me and knew how to. And there were moments. We had our own, moments of in one-on-one where he gave me a lesson I took the rest of my life. But I looked at him very much like I looked at my father, in the sense that I learned as much, if not more, from Dutch after I left being his teammate than I did with him. Just the conversations in my head I've had, and it's one of the things I take with me with people I've lost. I don't have, the only thing that happens now is I don't have to be in the room with Dutch to talk to him anymore, much like my father.
Talking to Curt Schilling right now on the Zach Gelb Show. That relationship after he was traded to the Marlins, just talk a little bit more on that relationship, and what was your relationship like with them in the last few years of his life?
Saw him very intermittently. He went through some tough times after he retired. He went through, which it happens to everybody. But I got to see him at the reunion in 2013, I believe it was. We had the 20-year reunion of that 93. Again, we had a 20-year reunion for a team that lost the World Series. That's how special it was. And I think that city still holds a place in his heart for that team. But I saw him, and we, even though it's not mainstream, we always know as players the situation health-wise with our former teammates. No matter who they are, we kind of have a way of getting a hold and talking with each other. So I knew what was going on with Dutch, and I talked to Dutch a couple different times. Saw him at the reunion. And, I was pissed, first off, because he was bald, and he was still better looking than everybody I've ever met. And he had that huge smile. And as a Christian, I was I was literally like moved to tears at the thought that Dutch had found his faith and found God in his life at a time, which was all I needed. And so we kept in touch and talked, and it's, again, it's tragic that the game lost a great man. In addition to Don Baylor, by the way, but the game, and I know I am, the game and I are far better for having Dutch than not.
You look back at that 93 team, and you mentioned how they threw a parade for a team that didn't win, and you would think that would never happen in a city like Philadelphia. But if you look at the history of Philadelphia sport teams that haven't won, that 93 Phillies team is at the top. You look at the Sixers with Allen Iverson and the Eagles that got to the Super Bowl and lost to the Patriots. But that 93 team, what made you guys so special? And I was watching the documentary last night with Harry Callis and also Lenny Dykstra. And that team, it was just unexpected success from a national perspective, and you had some fun personalities. After all these years, what stands out to you about that team?
Everything you heard about that team, as hard as it was to believe, was probably true. We took pride. If you remember, we played the Braves in the LCS, and it was America's team against America's Most Wanted. And then we were gypsies, tramps, and thieves. We were all those things. And there were fights in that locker room. There were a lot of fights on the field, which was a whole lot of fun. But it came back to the point that and Mitch and I is a great example. Mitch and I didn't like each other from the second we met, and we never liked each other. But at 7:05 every night we were teammates, and you didn't talk about or hurt or go after one of my teammates. That's not how it worked. You paid the price, and that was the team. That was the team. It was a very and I use air quotes old school team. And it was the kind of the ending of an era in that around that time where, hazing rookies today, you can get suspended from baseball. Hazing rookies, you get your butt kicked if you didn't do it back then. And I'm not saying that's for the better or worse, but it's different. And so, it is what it is today, but it was a very special team. And again, all you have to do is just remember that team was a parade. We had a parade, and we lost.
So you're telling me you don't miss those pies in the face?
No, not at all. No, and honest to God, guys, I was at a very different place in my career. I was just beginning my career. I wasn't part of Macho Row. I wasn't part of that gang from that social perspective. And I was young, and obviously, but those guys, well, not those guys, but Dutch and Lenny did a lot for me as far as, hey, dude, shut up. I mean, it worked for a while, but at some point, they made me understand that a lot of things that I thought were not right, and that was what veterans are supposed to do. I had Todd Pratt and Lenny Dykstra on my show Friday morning. We were laughing about stories about Dutch. He was the glue, he was the heart, and he was the soul of that team. What
did some of those players say when you got a chance to speak to them after Dutch's passing?
We laughed. We laughed about Dutch. That some of the greatest, like Todd Pratt was kind of the kid that Dutch brought up. He was the backup catcher there. A dear friend of mine before that, I played with him in the minor leagues, and they were telling a story about in '93. That was the first time I ever really was exposed to veterans taking care of all the young players. We'd go out to dinner as a team often, and we went out to dinner at Ruth Chris one night, and it's a pretty nice steakhouse. And we're sitting at the table, and the waitress walks by, and Todd leans over and says, "Hey, can I get some ketchup?" And the whole table went, "What the hell is wrong with you? This is not the Sizzler. This is the frickin' Ruth." It was just, and Dutch was the leader of a lot of those things. So yeah, and it was again, I'm honored to have been touched by him. But I would tell you, I never have been around anybody with more of a presence than Darren Daulton had on the field and off.
Curt, in closing, as we're wrapping up with Curt Schilling, let's just say someone comes up to you in 5-10 years and just asks you, hey, I never got a chance to see him play, never got a chance to meet him. Just how would you describe Dutch Daulton? What would you say?
The highest compliment I could give you was you would get every penny, no matter how much your ticket cost. He would make sure you got every single thing he had every game you watched him play. He never ever took any. He left everything he had on the field every single night. And for him, you have to understand and be behind the scenes, understand physically how hard that was for him night in and night out every night of a 162-game season.
With your time with them, what was the best moment you guys shared?
Well, professionally, I mean, it was the handshake after Game 5 of the 93 World Series when we shut out Toronto in Philadelphia. The smile. I mean, I remember Dutch kind of, and again, he had his way. Every game I ever pitched in the big leagues, I left a ticket for my father on the pass list. And we lost 15-14 the night before, if you guys remember the World Series. And so I pretty much took the mound knowing the season, not just the season was resting on that game, but we really didn't have much of a bullpen. 147 pitches later, we shut him out. But right before we walked out in the field, Dutch looked at me and he said, "This is for Dad." And I was like, it just like shook me to my core. And I don't remember really taking a breath for the next 2.5 hours.
When you guys lost after the Joe Carter home run, which we all know, what did Dutch say? Was there anything to say after that game?
No, you know what? We sat around in the locker room in Toronto. It wasn't supposed to end like that. You know, I realized that after, if you guys remember 2001 with 9/11 and everything, we played as the Diamondbacks. We played the Yankees in the World Series. You know, in the storybook ending, the Yankees win the World Series that year.
No question.
Right? This was very much in a storybook ending. The Phillies win the World Series that year, and the city of Philadelphia gets its winner. You know, everything was poised for, but that's not how life is. Right? Life presents bumps, hurdles that no one ever expects. It's not like the movies. So, you can't understand what it's like for the season to be over 30 seconds after you're in the ninth inning of a game. But we sat in the clubhouse and we laughed about, and I think we were all crushed that it was over, and knowing we had just done something none of us would ever experience again, no matter how long we played.
Well, Curt, once again, we do send our condolences. We all know the great man that Dutch Daulton was, and we appreciate you sharing some of those memories. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.